light of Christmas, Pope Francis preaches dialogue and peace as the Nativity is celebrated in Rome and around the world. Coronavirus crisis. The Omicron variant continues to plague Europe and the U.S. Window to the galaxies. NASA celebrates the long-awaited launch of the James Webb Space Telescope. And Smiling Pope, the life and legacy of Pope John Paul I, anticipating his beatification. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, December 27th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on the Feast of St. John the Evangelist. I'm Owen Jensen. Pope Francis kept his usual busy schedule over Christmas. On Christmas Eve, the Holy Father celebrated Mass at St. Peter's Basilica. He said God came into the world not in greatness, but in poverty.
Un povero bambino avvolto in fasce, con dei pastori.
Pope Francis also reminded the faithful to keep our eyes and our focus on heaven. Around 1,500 people attended the Mass. The Holy Father kissed a statue of the baby Jesus, and the choir sang traditional Christmas carols. On Saturday, Pope Francis delivered his traditional Christmas address at the Vatican. It included an appeal to world leaders that they be open to dialogue and committed to peace.
Che sperimentano la violenza del terrorismo internazionale.
Speaking from the central balcony overlooking rainy St. Peter's Square, the Holy Father said people have become so accustomed to disputes that we hardly notice them anymore. He added that the image of the baby Jesus with his arms stretched out is a sign Jesus wants to help with everything, including dialogue with one another. Yesterday, the Holy Father delivered a message to families saying the three most important words in a marriage are please, thanks, and sorry.
Contempliamo la bellezza di questo mistero.
At his Sunday address to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father also called on the Church and governments to do more to defend and support the family. And he encouraged parents and children to pray together every day for the gift of peace. There also were Christmas celebrations around the world. In Bethlehem's Manger Square, the scene was quiet and devout. The top Catholic clergymen in the Holy Land celebrated Mass in front of hundreds of people. Nearly all were local residents or visitors from neighboring Israel or the West Bank. A coronavirus travel ban barred international visits to Bethlehem for a second consecutive year. Meanwhile, in Tehran, ethnic Assyrians gathered in St. Mary's Catholic Church to mark Christmas Day. The homily asked for peace and calm in the Islamic Republic, where an estimated 100,000 Christians live as a minority among Iran's population of 84 million people. The Vatican and other parts of the world feature Christmas masses in person, but for part of Europe, the new Omicron variant of the coronavirus caused a lot of disruptions. Cases are growing in all European countries. In Italy, the number of positive coronavirus cases has been the highest since the beginning of the pandemic. That is also true in France and Ireland. Joining us now from Austria, Vienna, Austria, is Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Andreas, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me. Good to be with you.
Well, 2 days ago, it was Christmas, obviously, December 25th, and here in the U.S., in northern Illinois, I had the great experience, tremendous experience of celebrating Christmas in church, hearing a wonderful choir. It was absolutely beautiful. So my question to you is, have churches in Europe remained open over Christmas?
Well, Owen, the numbers here in Europe have been skyrocketing before and during the Christmas holidays. Still, most faithful were able to celebrate Christmas in a church and attend masses. In Italy, for example, just 2 days ago, we had 55,000 positive cases, which is the highest number since the beginning of the pandemic. The Italian government has decided on new restrictions and the obligation to wear a mask, even outdoors. However, this does not affect Christians more than any other citizens. So churches already respect a lot of rules. While there is no green pass required, churchgoers are asked to sanitize their hands, use masks in church, seats are spaced, and attendance is limited according to room size. This situation is exemplary probably for almost all European countries. A big exception, a sad exception, are the Netherlands, because there all Christmas Eve celebrations after 5 p.m. had to be canceled because churches, like all other public venues, are closed in the evenings as part of a strict lockdown measure. And here where I am in Austria, the country which was first to proclaim a general vaccine mandate, Christmas was still relaxed. Churches remain open and people can attend services without a green pass. But there's a lot of attention on Austria by neighboring countries also, whether or not, and if it really comes into reality, how the vaccine mandate will be enforced. So far, there's been no official protest from the bishops against this mandate.
Andreas, usually we see you with St. Peter's Basilica in the background. We know you're in Vienna, Austria. Why are you there specifically?
That's right, Owen. I'm in front of St. Stephen's Cathedral here in Vienna, Austria. I'm here because I am from Vienna originally, and my family and we came here to visit friends and family for the Christmas holidays. And I thought it's a fitting location also for our conversation, since the Catholic Church yesterday, alongside the Feast of the Holy Family, also celebrated St. Stephen's as the first Christian martyr. And the Orthodox Church actually celebrates him even today. So St. Stephen is very important in many European countries, especially also in Italy, where his feast day is a national holiday. He was the first Christian to die for his faith, being stoned to death between 33 and 36 AD. And according to the New Testament, also Saul, who later became St. Paul, was present at the killing. The Acts of the Apostles, in which we can find a description of his life and death, describes St. Stephen as a man full of faith and full of the Holy Spirit. Therefore, I think it's quite fitting that his cathedral is also the landmark symbol of the city of Vienna, here in the heart of Europe.
Well, what else can you tell the EWTN audience about St. Stephen's Cathedral? It is such a beautiful and impressive sight behind you.
Well, St. Stephen's is one of the most important Gothic churches really in Europe. Its construction began back in the 12th century. The cathedral is 350 feet long and has 4 towers, and the highest one is 400 feet high. At some point, this was the highest building in Europe, and of course back then also the highest building in the known world. The colored tiles that cover the roof of St. Stephen's Cathedral form the eagle coat of arms of the Habsburg Empire and the symbol of the city of Vienna and Austria. And inside you see various architectural styles from different eras. The central nave, the side chapels and the choir follow the Gothic style, but the altars were rebuilt in the Baroque style later on. The interior of the cathedral houses the bodies of members of the Habsburg family. And if you're familiar, and I'm sure you are, with the famous Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, he's not only buried in this cathedral, but he also married there. And if you ever come to Vienna, Owen, make sure to stop here for a Mass and say a prayer for us here in this cathedral.
Absolutely, that would be a dream come true for sure. Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief, Merry Christmas to you and your family, and peace be with you.
And to you.
South Africa's Anglican Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu has died at the age of 90. Desmond Tutu is remembered for his gracious manner amid human rights battles. He received honors for his role in overturning South Africa's former apartheid policies. He would serve as Bishop of Johannesburg and later as Archbishop of Cape Town between 1986 and 1996. The country has declared a week of mourning. Coming up, White House agenda, what challenges the Biden administration must address during a holiday week. And Catholic congressman, how one representative's family formed his life of service. President Joe Biden admits his administration has more work to do to get control of COVID-19. The Omicron variant is responsible for a sharp spike in cases across the country, and people are having a hard time getting tested.
We went from no over-the-counter tests in January to 46 million in October, 100 million in November, and almost 200 million in December. But it's not enough. It's clearly not enough. If we'd known, we would have gone harder, quicker if we could have.
President Biden told the group of governors that the federal government is working to increase the availability of testing and booster shots. He says they're mobilizing military doctors and providing FEMA ambulances to hard-hit areas. Joining us now is Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RealClearPolitics. Tom, welcome back. Good to see you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Get right to it. A report in Vanity Fair, I don't know if you saw it, but it says the White House rejected a plan in October to boost holiday testing. And here we are right now. Everyone is scrambling for a test, or a lot of people are. And they're having a very hard time finding one, the rapid test. President Biden denied that report today when he was walking to Marine One. A reporter asked him about it. So, first of all, your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, if that report is accurate, it's a real problem for the Biden administration. Look, Joe Biden promised during the campaign and even back in the spring that part of his plan to eradicate the virus and clamp down on the virus was to ramp up testing regimes. He said that in April of this year. He said it again when he reintroduced a plan to fight the Delta variant in the summer of this year. And then again, just now, as he's sort of trying to get a grapple with Omicron. But if, in fact, there was a plan presented to the White House on October 25th, Jen Psaki from the White House podium just 3 weeks ago dismissed the idea of sending test kits to people all across the country at home as impractical and not worth doing. And here, just a couple of weeks later, we found out the administration now says they're going to be doing that, in the beginning of next year. So it's a real problem for the Biden administration. They are behind the curve on this, and it looks like they were asleep at the switch.
You know, an interesting comment today when President Biden was meeting virtually with governors and they were discussing testing and the pandemic, and the President Biden said, quote, to these governors on the virtual screen from the White House, there is no federal solution discussing the pandemic and testing. Let me start over with that. There is no federal solution. This gets solved at the state level. That's quite a remarkable comment.
It is, particularly given that he ran almost his entire campaign criticizing Donald Trump and the federal government's response. In fact, there's a tweet out there where he says Trump isn't responsible for the deaths. He's responsible for the federal government's failure to respond to COVID. He promised that he was going to mount a robust federal response. And here we are a year into his first term in office, and now he's saying there is no federal solution. This is going to have to be handled at the state level. Again, I think it's going to raise a lot of questions, a lot of eyebrows, and not help his standing with the American people on his handling of this COVID crisis.
Let's move on to some numbers here. Your RealClearPolitics polling average has President Biden at a 53% disapproval rating. How does that number compare with other presidents in their first year?
Yeah, I mean, this is his all-time high in the RealClearPolitics average in terms of his disapproval rating. To put that in some context, at this point in Donald Trump's first year in office, his disapproval rating was 56 percentage points. Obama was lower than that, around 46 or so. And George W. Bush, I mean, after 9/11, his disapproval rating was way down. So, but certainly when you look at past presidents, Joe Biden's disapproval rating is as higher than everybody who preceded him except for Donald Trump, and he's only a couple points away from that. He's ended up being a very divisive president, and his approval rating is showing that by his high disapproval and his low approval rating.
So I'll ask you to take out your crystal ball. Do you see that number becoming better or worse in 2022?
It's tough. I mean, if the economy improves, if inflation abates, then perhaps he can recover some standing. The problem for Joe Biden is that a lot of the problems with his approval rating is that he's seen as less trustworthy. He's seen as less competent. He's seen as breaking some of the promises that he made during the campaign, saying he would bring the country together, govern from the center. And voters don't believe him on that after a year of watching him in office. So unless he changes course, it will be tough for him to recover some of those intangible aspects that gave him high approval rating in the first place.
Do Republicans make big gains in the midterms? Again, crystal ball question.
Well, if the election were held today, the polling indicates that they would make huge gains, both in the House and in the Senate. Again, November's a long time away, almost a year away. But given history, what we know about the average losses of a first-term administration in their off-year first midterm, and given where the Republicans stand now in the generic congressional ballot, they're at almost historic highs in a couple of different polls. So if the election were held today, yes, I think Republicans would win big in both the House and the Senate.
And we have just a few remaining moments here. Build Back Better. We've heard a lot about it the last several weeks. All of a sudden, it's like, quiet, right? Is it done? Is it dead? Or does it still have life?
It's in its zombie phase. It was dead, but now it's still sort of wandering around And Democrats seem to indicate they're going to try and put something, put it back together again and get it to a point where Joe Manchin, in fact, he might even write the thing and make progressives take a vote on it. But it looks like certainly Nancy Pelosi has indicated her willingness to work with Joe Manchin. Joe Biden has said that he and Joe Manchin are going to sit down and get something done. So it's in its zombie phase. Will it get all the way back to life? Not sure. It's probably a coin flip, probably 50-50 at this point.
All right, Tom, thank you very much for your time and analysis. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Other news now. In tonight's Faith and Politics series, we highlight a lawmaker who is no stranger to serving. Illinois Congressman Darin LaHood followed in his father's footsteps to Capitol Hill, but he says it wasn't politics that helped shape him. It was a strong Catholic faith passed down from his parents. He recently sat down with Capitol Hill correspondent Erik Rosales.
Since he was sworn in on September 17, 2015, Congressman Darin LaHood says not a day goes by that he doesn't thank the Lord in daily prayers that he gets to serve the people of Illinois.
I think about the people back home. These are people that work hard, that play by the rules, have a strong faith in God, very patriotic, and they want their elected officials to make the right decisions.
A priority, always asking God for guidance.
Prayer and faith and my Catholic upbringing comes back to you and is so important when many of those decisions have to be made, and has been extremely helpful to me and very beneficial throughout my life.
Lessons he and his wife Kristen instill in their three sons, McKay, Lucas, and Teddy. Prior to his election to Congress, LaHood served 4 years in the Illinois State Senate and spent more than 9 years as a state and federal prosecutor, a successful career which he credits his parents.
I'm blessed to have 2 great parents and 3 siblings, and grew up going to church, and faith and family being a huge part of our lives.
Congressman LaHood graduated from the same high school, Spalding Academy, as the late Archbishop Fulton Sheen.
If this telecast does not prove interesting, it will be wholly my fault, because the theme itself is.
And has been instrumental helping the late Archbishop become a saint.
To have the opportunity to have potentially a saint in our district has been great. So we've played a role in working with the Vatican, raising awareness on this issue, and then working to get his body back to Peoria.
Congressman LaHood says if the late Archbishop does become a saint, it would be monumental for Central Illinois and for St. Mary's Cathedral in Peoria, where the late Archbishop's remains are entombed. He says he's just thankful to have played a small role in the process. At the Capitol, Erik Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, we learn more about the announcement of Pope John Paul I's beatification in the new year. Those who study outer space received a long-awaited present on Christmas Day with a successful launch of the James Webb Space Telescope.
From a tropical rainforest to the edge of time itself, James Webb begins a voyage back to the birth of the universe.
Those shots never get old, right? Amazing. The JWST blasted off from French Guiana in South America. The $10 billion telescope is headed for a destination more than 4 times beyond the moon, and it might unearth more information about the Big Bang Theory. Well, finally tonight, the Vatican announced Pope John Paul I will be beatified next September. Pope John Paul I, known as the Smiling Pope, served only 33 days as pontiff before he passed away in 1978 at the age of just 65. A miracle attributed to him has now placed him on the path to sainthood. Joining us now is Dr. Matthew Bunson, Executive Editor and Washington Bureau Chief of EWTN News. Dr. Bunson, welcome back. I should say boss, welcome back, right?
Good to be with you.
Great to see you. Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
Well, let's get right to it. The big question, for those who may not be familiar, it's been a long time, 1978, right?
That's right.
Okay. What more can you tell us about Pope John Paul I and his life leading up to before he became Pope?
Well, history remembers him as the Pope who reigned for about 33 days. His very abrupt and unexpected death came between the passing of Pope St. Paul VI, and then, of course, the Colossus, Pope St. John Paul II. In that sense, he's been overshadowed in history, and yet he was deemed worthy to be elected Pope in 1978 to succeed Paul VI. He took the name John Paul I, which is significant for 2 reasons. One, He chose John Paul, the first pope, to take two names in honor of his two predecessors, John the 23rd and Paul the 6th. But he also was very specific in saying, I am John Paul the First. Think of Pope Francis, who would normally be called Pope Francis I, but he's just Francis. John Paul I is making a point that he knew that there would be other John Pauls to follow him, and of course there was. He was considered to be a brilliant theologian in his own right, but he was marked especially as a Patriarch of Venice at the time when he was a cardinal, at the time of his election, as a man of deep humility and deep prayer, which is one of the reasons why he's being beatified now.
Also known as the Smiling Pope, right?
Yes.
And what's the reason for that?
He, from the very moment of his election, he had a great sense of humor. When you go back and you look at his general audiences and the speeches that he gave in that brief month that he was Pope, he was always smiling. He had a wonderful sense of humor, very self-deprecating, very humble. Again, that was his motto, humilitas, in honor of St. Charles Borromeo of Milan, one of the great reformers. But he smiled everywhere he went, and he captured the imagination of the crowds around the world, especially looking back on Pope Paul VI, who had such weight upon him of the papacy during those dark years of the 1970s.
Wish we could all do more of that, right? Smile some more, right?
Yes,
the whole world could use it instead of all the frowns all the time. All right, so the big question out there is, you know, he passed away, I believe, because of a heart attack, right?
Yes.
But there's always been this speculation, mystery, theory, you know, it goes on and on, right? What is your assessment of that?
Well, his death was absolutely unexpected. No one saw that. It's a little interesting hint, though, that was given to the cardinals who elected him on the very day that he was elected. When he accepted the burden of the papacy, he made a joke. It was assumed to be a joke at the time. He said, "May God forgive you for what you have done to me." Everyone thought it was just a sort of an offhand comment. He had long suffered throughout his life from a variety of health issues. It had delayed, for example, his ordination and other things. And we know going in at the time of his election that he did have a health issue in terms of his cardiological health. And clearly what happened was that the burden of office, but also just his deteriorating health that no one knew about, took him very unexpectedly. There have been rumors about his supposed assassination or his untimely death really from the time of his passing. But very careful study, especially the Vatican, the witnesses who were there, the nuns who found him in the morning, who were bringing him his morning coffee, all of it points to death by natural causes. So these are simply rumors that hopefully will eventually be put to rest, but he died from natural causes.
There are quite a few popes from the modern era who are on the path to sainthood.
Yes.
But in his particular case, has to do with a young, I believe, 11-year-old girl, right?
Yes, the miracle that's going to lead or has led to his beatification is of a young 11-year-old Argentinian girl by the name of Candela Giarda, who was suffering from what they believed to be incurable, unstoppable encephalopathy. In other words, a brain disorder that was causing seizures, and she was not expected to survive in 2011. A priest who came to visit her hospital bed proposed to her mother that they go pray and ask for the intercession of the late John Paul I. They did, very specifically asking for his intercession. She was healed and is a young, vibrant, healthy 21-year-old today.
That is, you know, those stories always send chills up your spine, right? You
Yes.
When doctors have no explanation, right? And think the beatification, the sainthood process. Can you briefly please explain how that works again? You know, I'm not an expert in that by any means.
Well, in the case of John Paul I, we're really studying the life of Albino Luciani. He was Pope for only 33 days, so the question is always asked, well, how can you just canonize or beatify a Pope? In fact, we're studying the holiness of this particular person, much as we did Karol Wojtyła with the canonization of John Paul II. This involves a diocesan process where you study the life and the writings and then determine, by the Holy See, his heroic virtue. That led to his title of Venerable. Then you need a miracle to take place for the beatification, a sort of affirmation. And that's what we have now with his beatification. We will need another miracle to lead to his canonization, although Pope Francis has seemed willing, as he did with, I think, John the 23rd, to sort of dispense that, to move on to the canonization because of the worthiness of the candidate.
Well, it's a fascinating history, just 33 days, but he's still discussed today, right? And the smiling thing, really, if you're going to leave an impression on your life with someone, smile, right?
Yes.
Isn't that great? That's terrific. Makes us all feel better. Dr. Matthew Bunson, boss, again, thanks very much, and Merry Christmas to you as well.
Same
okay?
to you. And
great
Happy
to see
New
you.
Year if I don't see you.
Yeah, hopefully a better 2022.
Amen for all of us.
All right. Well, we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Owen Jensen. Good night, and God bless.